Hello everyone, my name is Chantel and I'm a teacher with the New Westminster School District in British Columbia. I'm also a transgender person and I've been involved in promoting safe and welcoming schools for LGBTQ youth for many years. In this video, I'll be sharing my knowledge about standing up for trans youth in schools. This video is really just meant to be a jumping off point for teachers who are new to this topic, but at the end I'll point you towards some resources that will help you to dig a bit deeper. Here's a peek at what to expect from this video. We'll explore some key terms and concepts related to gender. We'll consider some of the challenges commonly faced by trans youth. We'll look at ways teachers can support trans youth in our schools. I'll provide you with an appreciative inquiry exercise you can do with your colleagues to start making change in your school district. And finally, I'll direct you towards some resources for further professional development on this topic. Let's get started. Many of us were raised with a cookie-cutter understanding of what gender is. I was taught that everyone is the gender they were assigned at birth and that there's only two genders, male and female. I was also taught that boys should be masculine and girls should be feminine. But this understanding of gender leaves a lot of people out, and this exclusion leads to a lot of discrimination. So it's important to delve deeper into the complexities of gender in order to make room for those who have been historically erased or forgotten about. This genderbread person is a helpful tool for building a more complex understanding of gender. Everyone watching this video is kind of like this genderbread person in that we all have a gender identity, we all have a gender expression, we all have a biological sex, and a sexual orientation. So what do these terms mean? Well, your gender identity is how you think about your gender, whether you feel that you're a man or a woman, genderqueer, or something else. Notice that this can be different from your biological sex, such as male, female, or intersex. Biological sex has to do not with how you feel, but with what anatomy you have. You also have a gender expression, which is how you express your gender through appearance, clothing, and behavior. Finally, we all have a sexual orientation, which has to do with what gender we're attracted to. So what does the word transgender mean? Many use it as an umbrella term that includes anyone with a gender identity or gender expression that doesn't match up with the gender they were assigned at birth, or in other words, it doesn't match up with their biological sex. This is a very broad definition, and it encompasses all kinds of identities like the ones listed in this picture. I'll include a lexicon on the website if you'd like to learn more about what each of these words means. Even though there's a lot of diversity in trans communities, there are a number of issues commonly faced by trans youth in our high schools. The information I'm about to share with you comes from a national study by EGAL Canada. EGAL surveyed almost 4,000 high school students across Canada between the years 2007 and 2009, and here's what they found out. 3/4 of trans youth reported being verbally harassed at school. We're talking slurs, threats, abuse disguised as jokes, and over 1/3 reported being physically harassed at school. Here we're talking about punching, pushing, slapping, kicking, having your clothes torn, that sort of thing. So it's no surprise then that a whopping 75% of trans youth feel unsafe at school. We know that when youth feel unsafe at school, they're more likely to be absent, to drop out, to have difficulty learning, and to feel anxious and depressed. As a result, 1/5 of trans youth have attempted suicide, and more than that, nearly half have seriously considered it. So the consequences of bullying are severe and life-threatening, and that's why it's so important that we take action and stand up for trans youth in our schools. It might also be useful to bear in mind that not all trans youth have supportive parents. As a result, they're at increased risk for homelessness. In fact, 40% of homeless youth are LGBT, and 1 in 5 trans youth is homeless or at risk of being homeless. Given this context, it's important for us to all acknowledge what we can do to support trans youth in schools. Here are some ideas. We can apply the tools of anti-oppressive education to solve this problem. A scholar named Kevin Kumashiro came up with an overview of 4 ways of doing anti-oppressive education. I'll explain what each one might look like as applied to trans students. The first strategy is providing education that caters to the unique needs of trans students. These strategies don't take extra money or extra time, they just require sensitivity. For example, it's crucial that we refer to students by their preferred name and preferred pronouns. This might be different from the name on our attendance sheets, and it might even be different from the name the student's parent uses. Secondly, don't assume that a student is out to the world as trans. If a student isn't out, then staff members should only be informed on a needs-to-know basis. Don't disclose that a student is trans unless you have their permission. The boy in this picture is President Franklin D. Roosevelt. This serves as a reminder that there is no piece of clothing that is inherently for men or inherently for women. The concepts of men's and women's clothing are socially constructed and change over time. It's not a school's place to police gendered behavior, so it's important that school dress codes allow students to express their gender in a way that's congruent with their gender identity. Fourth, students are entitled to use the washrooms and locker rooms that correspond with their gender identity. If a trans student doesn't feel comfortable with this, you could give them access to a teacher washroom or other more private washroom in the school. Make sure that the books available in your library reflect gender diversity. Ivan Coyote is a very popular trans author in British Columbia, and her books are great for youth. I'll post some other titles on the website too. Also, make sure your counselor's office has resources about gender identity as well. Gay-straight alliances, or GSAs, are becoming more commonplace in high schools, and this is a really good thing. Make sure that they're welcoming spaces for trans youth as well. Lastly, it's crucial that your school district has a policy in place that takes a stand against homophobic and transphobic bullying. I've posted a great model policy on the website for you to check out. We've talked about what teachers can do to support trans youth. It's also important that we educate youth who are not trans to have a more inclusive understanding of gender. Here are some ways to go about this. It's inevitable that gender stereotypes will pop up in class discussions or curriculum materials. Use these as teachable moments and model how to critique gender stereotypes or elicit critiques from your students. Given all of the stereotypes about gender out in the world, it's crucial to include positive representations of gender diversity in your lessons and curriculum materials. Another strategy is to observe events like the Day of Pink or the Trans Day of Remembrance and use these as opportunities to educate students about the rainbow of gender possibilities. Earlier on, I mentioned the word critique. Education about privileging and othering gives students the tools to perform a sound critique about overly simplistic understandings of gender. The idea here is to teach students how to think, not what to think, by teaching them the language for analyzing oppression. Here's a list of concepts that will help students understand how oppression works so that they are better able to resist it. I'll post this teaching tool on the website as well. It's called the Cycle of Socialization, and it's a useful way to think about how we learn to value certain gender identities and gender expressions over others. Of course, it's not enough to teach students to be critical thinkers. It can be very distressing to learn about all of the injustices in the world without having any sense of how to go about creating a better world. A consideration of the consequences of transphobic oppression should be followed by discussions around how to resist transphobic oppression. This starts with questioning how we make meaning and thinking about what happens when we are confronted by something that challenges our beliefs and values. It also involves considering the importance of being willing to step outside of our comfort zone, to consider a perspective that's different from our own. I saw a bumper sticker yesterday that said, "Don't believe everything you think." I think that's a really great motto. A helpful teaching tool for this kind of work is the Cycle of Liberation. I'll post this on the website if you'd like to take a closer look. I'd just like to reiterate that the goal here is to teach students how to think, not what to think, because that would be indoctrination. And education is not about indoctrination. Instead, it's about developing critical thinking skills. At the end of the day, students have the right to believe anything they want. If they want to believe that the moon is made of cheese, then that's their right. But students also have a responsibility to fully think their beliefs through and to understand the consequences of their beliefs on other people. And that's our job as teachers, to make sure that all beliefs are subject to rigorous critique rather than just having students blindly believing what they're told. To recap, these are the 4 prongs of anti-oppressive education as related to trans students. If you want to learn more about anti-oppressive education, I really recommend this book, Troubling Education, by Kevin Kumashiro. All right, real change won't happen if teachers and students are working in isolation on this issue. Change will happen when people start talking together and exchanging ideas and working together. So the final segment of this video is an exercise that will help guide these conversations in your school. You can do this at a staff meeting or during a PD day, or you can start a working group in your district and use these questions at your first meeting. They're based on a method for studying and developing communities created by students and faculty at Case Western Reserve University in Ohio. It's called Appreciative Inquiry, and it involves asking questions that uncover the best of what is in order to plan for the best of what could be. I recommend doing each question as a think, pair, share. The first question is, describe a success story when you, your colleague, or your school did a good job of accommodating gender diversity. What about this moment made it a success? Feel free to pause the video here to do the exercise and press play when you're ready to move on. The second question is, what do you especially value in yourself, in your colleagues, in your students, in parents, and in your school district when it comes to accommodating student diversity? The third question is, imagine that by 2025, your school district has established a reputation as one of the most supportive school districts in your province for transgender youth. What has contributed to making that distinction possible? What bold decisions were made, and who set these decisions in motion? The next question is, where is there fertile ground to expand support for trans students in your school district? And who might be willing to partner on this initiative? These are the final questions. What specific ways would you like to contribute to realizing this dream? And what support do you need to accomplish this? This website will point you to some of the most helpful resources I've come across in terms of supporting trans youth. Please explore them and use them in your own classroom. I'll leave you with my contact information in case you ever have any questions about trans issues in schools. Thanks so much for being open to this presentation today, and thanks for watching.